Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lai. I'm a solution architect from Veeam Software. Thank you very much for joining today's sessions. My topic today will be top Kubernetes pitfalls and how to avoid them. While waiting for the rest of people to join, let me do some housekeeping. For those of you who just joined, you will be automatically muted on entry. However, if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A and I will try my best to answer all your questions at the end of the session. Then for those of you who asked about the slide and also the recording, don't worry about that. We will share the slide and also the recording by email. You roughly will need to wait around probably 1 week to get the notifications. So without further ado, let's have a quick look on the agenda, which I'm going to cover for today's sessions. Well, I will start with Kubernetes market trend, and then I also will talk about why Kubernetes adoption is not easy. So I will also share on 5 pitfalls when you want to adopt on Kubernetes. And of course, when we talk about Kubernetes, you also need to look into backup and recovery. So this is where Veeam come into a picture. We do have a product called Custom K10. If the time permitted, I will show you some demo as well. And lastly, I also will review the question that you raised. Let's have a quick look on the IT technology evolutions. Before 2000, everyone run their workload into one single server, right? So this particular single server, you will install operating system and run one application. Then starting from early 2000, virtualization start to boom thanks to VMware, right? Whereby a lot of customers can now create multiple virtual machines and they can run into one single host. On 2015 itself, people start to move into shift to virtual containers. And then one of the containers which is very famous is Docker. Then recently on 2020 and above, we do see that enterprise start to go for Kubernetes. The reason is some of the benefit of the Kubernetes will be it provide a container orchestrations which do automations, scaling, and management of containerized applications. Kubernetes is also portable and consistent as well. It allows you to abstract away from underlying infrastructures and provide consistent environment across your different platforms, either on-prem or even on the cloud as well. This allows organizations to avoid vendor lock-in and move easily. Kubernetes are very famous and because they are designed to scale and they can scale based on demand. Now let's look into two survey. This two survey is you can refer to the link on the bottom, right? So this survey is talking about adoptions on Kubernetes. From the survey itself, we're able to notice 5.6 million of developers they start to use Kubernetes. From the figure itself, 67% we can see that it's increased for the past 12 months. When people start to move into Kubernetes, we also saw that security cost has been reduced by up to 66% and unplanned downtime by at least 30%. In terms of resource consumption and licensing costs, it's also reduced by 50%. And IT administration cost is up to 60%. For development accelerations, we can see that the applications development have been increased 2 to 3 times in most cases, saving between 12 to 24 weeks of labor cost per VM or even per new applications. Now, but the thing, one thing that you need to understand is Kubernetes adoption is not always easy. It's not as simple as deploy on the physical server or run on the virtual machine. For those of you who are new into Kubernetes or never heard about Kubernetes before, please feel free to go to our website called kubecampus.io. So this particular website contains wide variety of resources, white paper, blog, and also hands-on lab as well. So why Kubernetes is not easy to adopt? There's 5 pitfalls. The first one will be a lot of people thought that Kubernetes is just like traditional or virtual IT infrastructures, all right? But the thing is, it's not as straightforward as deploying a virtual machines, right? In order for you to do configurations, it can be very complex. That's because Kubernetes require you to configure on the YAML file or even JSON file as well. And sometimes in order for you to configure these two configuration file, it takes time for you to configure. In terms of resource allocation and also versus the over provisioning, well, sometimes Kubernetes provisioning can be set by define the value in YAML file, but it can cause the problems, especially when you configure some wrong settings on the YAML file. Next, you need to understand about Grafana and Prometheus. So this is the two tools that you use to monitor your Kubernetes environment. How about networking? So in terms of networking, Kubernetes networking can be very complex, especially when it involves multiple clusters and also cloud deployment. However, Kubernetes, they do provide high availability of your containers, whereby it allows you to provision containers orchestrations, but it doesn't focus on backup and recovery. Traditional backup software that you use on virtual and even physical will not work here. Now let's compare about cloud native versus VM. What's the difference between both of them? First and foremost, we are going to look into virtual machines. Well, virtual machines provide a better isolations with a strong resources overhead, whereby each VM contains a full operating system. There's a high resource utilization, and all of them are managed independently. Each VM, they do contain their own operating system, own IP address, and they rely on external storages as well. Adding and removing VM is managed by a management tool such as vCenter if you are using on VMware. Data consistency is often achieved through operating system level cleansing, which does not require an application level awareness. When you want to do a restoration of the operating system, it will restore entire application as they are bound together. Now let's move into Kubernetes, right? So for Kubernetes itself, it's an open source container orchestration system for automating software development, scaling, and management. Some characteristics of Kubernetes, for example, a container, they do share the same host OS kernel. They are lightweight. Multiple containers can run on the same host, whereby they share the host OS kernel, better utilization, and they can do fast startup as well. Applications is designed as microservices, and each microservices provides specific function, and it can have its own storages as well. You can run different database and store on different type of data as well. And lastly, most of the configuration is by using YAML file. Now let's look into pitfall number 2. A lot of people thought that Kubernetes is automatically secure because they are cloud, right? Well, there are a few challenges on here. Let's focus on secret management. First and foremost, in terms of secret management, it requires you to pay a special attention and also follow best practice as well. You also need to configure access control. It can also introduce some vulnerability as well. Example, if you do a hard-coded of secret on the YAML file, this will store sensitive information on the YAML file, such as deployment configurations. Next, you also need to grant extra permissions during an initial deployment. Lack of encryptions on the secret will cause a security problem. Not to forget as well, there's no rotation of secret, no audit log to keep tracks, and the worst part is, let's say if you deploy the pod as run as a root user, if an attacker is able to gain access to the root, they can start to do attacks and they can exploit on those vulnerability. Other common vulnerability that most enterprise make are Kubernetes oldest version. All right, that means they are outdated. Most of the enterprise customers, they do not upgrade their Kubernetes version to the latest version. Now, how about namespace, right? So namespace provide a logical isolation, but it's not a very strong security boundaries. Attackers who gain access to the namespace, they can potentially access the resources due to poor security. And lastly, most people thought that Kubernetes are only meant to maintain stateless data. Well, it's true. During an initial phase of Kubernetes deployments, Kubernetes is designed for stateless applications. However, as technology starts to evolve, 86% of people start to adopt stateful applications. Due to the technology has been evolved, in order to support stateful applications, Kubernetes start to introduce concepts like stateful set, persistent volume PV, persistent volume claim PVC, and also CSI as well. So CSI is a very important technology which allow you to define the API to add and configure storage provisioner in cluster of the Kubernetes. This API enable the discovery of storage capability and define a new Kubernetes resources to manage advanced storages features such as snapshot and clone as well. So with this, stateful application has become mainstream on Kubernetes space. So why should you consider running data on Kubernetes? There are several benefits of it. Well, first and foremost, it allows you to do co-location and migrations. Next, you can do testing. You can do copy data management. You can do application and schema versioning, polygonally persistent, and the best part is reduce your cost against managing DB as a service when you're running on Kubernetes. Now let's look into pitfall number 3, right? So a lot of people thought that my data is being backed up because it's cloud. Well, if you refer to the shared responsibility model, right? So this is the role of each party. As a cloud provider, they are only responsible for services and infrastructures. As a customer, when you store your data into the cloud, it's your own responsibility when the data is reside on the cloud. For customers, they do control configurations and they also use the resources which provided by the cloud provider. It still depends on the customers to implement security services to protect the environments. So as a cloud provider, they do provide tools and features for the customer to use and implement as well. Now, next question, how about Valero? Well, Valero is the open source project. It do not have a graphic user interface. You can use it to do backup and recovery. However, one thing, it do come with a certain limitations, whereby it don't support application aware, no compression and deduplications, and besides than that, it's also outdated as well. So pitfall number 4, I can easily move the workload among cloud because it's container. Well, Kubernetes is independent from the infrastructures. It do allow you to transfer between different platforms, especially on-premise or even to the cloud as well. But one thing that you need to understand is not that straightforward like backup and restore. Container require you to do transformation. And all these require a backup software to do the job. When you have a backup software in mind, first and foremost, it must be able to cater for Kubernetes backup. It must be able to support migration and portability, help you to do cluster upgrade, migrate applications, data management, and also upgrade as well. Now let's move into the last pitfall, right? So Kubernetes will solve all of my organization problem, okay, such as scaling, velocity, and automation as well. But even though they solve some of the problem, it do introduce some new challenges as well, such as money, time, and resources to learn about Kubernetes. Backup operator who are managing your virtual farm and also your physical farm, they may not understand how to back up Kubernetes. You need to involve different parties, such as developer, backup operator, infrastructure team, and also security team as well. So the first step that you're going to do is, let's say if you want to adopt on Kubernetes, you need to understand the needs before you move into Kubernetes. Once you understand the needs, then you can start to adopt. You can move forward to step 2 and the remaining step. The last step will be look into profit when you're moving into Kubernetes. So once you have Kubernetes in place, you must start to look into backup. So backup solutions are only as good as your ability to restore them. When you look into backup solutions, it must be able to do these 3 things. First and foremost, data recovery. You must be able to recover your Kubernetes when disaster comes. Second, it must come with the data security. That means you can able to configure like encryptions, access control, auditing, and the most important thing in now to cater for cybersecurity attacks will be ransomware protections. And last but not least, data freedom. It must be able to give you ability to move your containers between different Kubernetes distributions, between on-premise and also on the cloud as well. And this is what we call portability. So just want to share with everyone here, Veeam is not only backup virtual farm and also physical farm. We do have a solutions to backup Kubernetes, and this product is called Kasten K10. Kasten K10 provide a Kubernetes native data protections. It allows you to seamless backup and restore, disaster recovery, and also application mobility for Kubernetes. Kasten K10 is very easy to use, and this is how it works in 3 simple steps. First and foremost, it allows you to do discovery, protect, and also restore anywhere. So now let's go deep into this, right? Kubernetes is the Kubernetes, Kasten K10 is a Kubernetes native backup solutions. It sits on top of your Kubernetes API, right? On your Kubernetes platform. So therefore, we're able to discover those applications by leveraging on Kubernetes API. So once you discover those applications, then you can start to move into the next step, whereby you can start to configure policy to protect those containers. Okay, if you do have multiple cluster, you can deploy Kasten K10 to support cluster. You can even create a global policy and apply this policy to specific clusters to back up your containers. So Kasten K10 performs snapshot for short term, and then for long term, you can transfer to object storage, you can transfer to a nest, and even to Veeam repository as well. So when disaster comes, you can easily restore your containers from the snapshot, or you can take the copy from the object storage. You can even implement disaster recovery for your containers and perform transformations to restore your containers into any platforms, either on-premise or even to the cloud as well. So next questions, how about data consistency to ensure reliability of your backup, right? Well, when performing a backup using Kasten, data can be captured in a number of different ways. Using a supported storages, Kasten can perform crash consistent snapshot or Kubernetes persistent volume. But this is likely insufficient for workloads such as database, whereby data consistency is very critical to ensure a reliable restore experience. In the Veeam backup and replication world, you can use what we call pre-freeze and post-thaw scripts against a guest OS cuisines, the guest file system, and also workload. On Kubernetes, you can also ensure data consistency during backup by using what we call Blueprint. Blueprint provide a similar set of capability like pre and post script logic. So in summary, Kasten K10 can work on most of the major distributions. If you're running on on-prem, we can support SUSE branches, VMware Tanzu, Red Hat OpenShift, right? And if you're using cloud as well, we can support Amazon EKS, Azure AKS, Google JKE as well, right? On the underlying infrastructure storages, we can also use the leveraging on the CSI drivers, okay, to perform a snapshot, right? So this is the brand that we can support it. And then not only to back up a stateless Kubernetes container, we can also support stateful containers as well, such as MySQL, Microsoft SQL servers, Postgres, MongoDBs, and many, many more, right? And then we can also integrate with a third-party security services, such as Red Hat, AWS, Kerberos, and many, many more as well. So let me move into a demo. So for those of you who would like to learn about Kubernetes, or some of you probably first time heard about Kubernetes, right? All the technical jargons and also the information about Kubernetes, you can go to this website called kubecampus.io. Okay, once you log in, you can also go and view all those courses as well. All right, all these courses are free. You can also read the white paper and also attend the hands-on lab as well. Now let's move into Kasten K10. This is how it looked like. Right, so this is the dashboard of Kasten K10. You can manage it by using a web browser. From here, you can do backup, restoration, DR, and also application mobility as well. Okay, so from here, remember just now we talked about Kasten K10. You do not require a virtual machine, right? All you need to do is just install Kasten K10 into your Kubernetes platform. It sits on top of that, and then it will leveraging on Kubernetes API to discover all your applications. So from here, you can see that there are 8 applications that have been detected by Kasten K10. If you would like to configure policy, you can go to here, the policy. And then if you would like to see the data usage in terms of storage snapshot and also data storages consumption on object storage, you can view it from here. Okay, all those policies that we execute, the job will be appearing, and then you can see there's a historical graph, all right, showing the progress and also the status as well. Okay, you can also view the statistics, all right, of the job that are running, okay, to view some of the actions that you perform. Now let's click into applications. So once you click into applications, this is the list of applications that we can detect it. And then let's say if I look into one of the container called Pacman, all right. So on the Pacman itself, these particular containers, it consumes around 8 gig of total disk space. It consists of 1 persistent volume, 2 workload, 3 services, and 5 configuration components. All this is what we call microservices. And then you can also click this button to perform an action. For example, you can do snapshots, you can do restorations, you can do export, and other things as well. Now let's click into policy. So this is the policy whereby you can view all your policy that you already configure. To start create a policy, you can click on this button, put a name into that policy. Okay, and then select your backup frequency. Okay, for example, I want to backup hourly. You can also set the how often that you want to perform this backup. You can set the frequency as often as every 5 minutes. Okay, and then you can also specify the retentions that you want to keep for the snapshots. Okay, snapshot is for short term. If you want to transfer for long-term archiving, you can enable these options, enable backup. It will transfer to object storage. You can also support NFS and also Veeam repository as well. Okay. Besides than that, you can also specify to backup by label, by names. And then for those of you who would like to do application consistency, this is where you need to use the what we call blueprint. And before we click create policy, you can also view the YAML file. Okay, so this is the YAML file. So most developers, they will be able to interpret this YAML file. They can even copy this and modify as well. Right. So now let's move on into blueprint. So for your developers, if they know how to write the blueprint, they can also add the new blueprint as well. Okay. So if they do not know how to write the blueprint, they can also get this blueprint from the GitHub. Right. So if you look on the list here, we do have a blueprint to backup MongoDB, Postgres as well. You can click on edit. Right. So this is all the configurations about the blueprint. So it will do like pre-scripts and also PostScript as well to make it data consistency when it back up the MongoDB. So this is the, you can go to the GitHub, all right? For example, you can go to the canister.io as well. It's an open source project whereby you can download all the blueprints and you can insert into custom K10. Now let's look into transform set. Okay. So this is one of the sample of the transform set whereby we change the storage classes when we are moving from on-premise to AWS ROSA. Okay. You can also click on the example. So this is the few examples of the transform set that you can apply in and you can put in as well. Now let's go to the setting. To ensure the high availability for custom K10, you can also implement what we call K10 disaster recovery. Right. So that's all. A quick run through on the demo. Now let's back to the slide. So for those of you who would like to play around with custom K10, you can just go and download the custom K10, and then you will install into your Kubernetes platform. So by default, we'll give you a free license up to 5 worker nodes. Our license is based on worker nodes. So we can, during the trials, you can use 5 worker nodes. All right, so now let's go to the Q&A. Let's see if there are any questions. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop in the Q&A. All right, so no questions. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for joining today's sessions and see you next time.